Chuck, I know we like to have a relaxed conversation, and but sometimes we're on the clock.
Yes.
And we are on the clock right now. We've got 20 minutes with Stephen A. Smith, one of the busiest men in the world.
No question. Thanks for giving us 20 minutes, Stephen A.
Yeah.
Please, man. Anytime, guys. How y'all doing?
Good, man. Stephen A., listen.
We appreciate you, man.
You know how much we love you, man. Listen, we got to get right into it. Let's talk about these black coaches, man. What the hell is going on, man? Why can't they get any jobs? Now they're getting fake interviews. Now they're getting allegedly asking them to lose. We've been talking about this a long time. Where are you at on this? Because I watch you all the time, obviously.
You know what? I think it's really come down to, unlike basketball where you have 12 to 15 men on a roster and you have an NBA league that's incredibly progressive in their thinking. And I'm not talking politics at all, just talking about just being forward thinkers. You have a situation where the questions that the NFL has about African Americans leading men, the NBA does not seem to have. There's no other way to slice it. When you take into account the fact that the Rooney Rule, which is a rule that compelled NFL teams to interview black candidates for potential head coaching jobs, that the Rooney Rule was implemented in 2003. And there were 3 black head coaches at that time. And here we are in the year 2022. There's 1 black head coach out of 32 teams. 4 openings have been filled already. All of them have been white male individuals. The Jim Harbaugh situation in Minnesota, where he was interviewing for the Vikings job and he bowed out and announced that he's going to stay at Michigan. And the leading candidate for that job is going to be Kevin O'Connell for the Los Angeles Rams offensive coordinator. And, you consider that would make it 5. And these guys have no head coaching experience whatsoever. And then you think about what a guy like Brian Flores has had to endure. What else is there? What other conclusion is there to come to? I think ultimately what it comes down to is that we have an abundance of owners in the National Football League, billionaires who don't take kindly to being told what to do, who want to do things their way, hire who they want, et cetera, as most employers would do. And their mentality is that they don't give a damn about the issue itself. And if you happen to be a black candidate and they don't want you, they don't want you. And they're not going to look at the numbers. They're going to look at their respective team and they're going to say, we feel no obligation to address this. And ultimately it comes down to questions that they have about black men being leaders of men in the National Football League. I think the numbers show that.
Stephen A., how much of the Brian Flores story, and this is not just the accusations in his lawsuit of racial discrimination in hiring, but also his revelation, which Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, denies, that he's, hey, here's $100,000 for every loss as we tank. How much of this came as a shock to you?
Well, the only thing that shocked me was the $100,000 offered per loss, allegedly. And it's incredibly important that we do what Charles did at the very beginning of this discussion, bringing up the word alleged, because we don't know. Just because Brian Flores has filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL and 3 teams, the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos, the Miami Dolphins, and he's made these allegations about Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, doesn't mean it's true. But it does raise the eyebrow. It's definitely something that needs to be investigated. And if found to be true, Stephen Ross has to give up ownership of the Miami Dolphins. You cannot have an ownership stake in an NFL franchise when you were encouraging your coach to lose on purpose to the degree where you offered payments per game for him to lose. That is just as egregious as it gets. It compromises the competitive nature of the sport. Roger Goodell himself would admit that as commissioner of the National Football League, and there's no way around that. What's alarming to me, and what I said on First Take on Thursday morning was this: I want to know if any white coaches were propositioned in similar fashion. We heard Brian Flores said it happened to him. We heard Hugh Jackson come out and say that Cleveland Browns ownership did the same thing with him. Were there any white coaches that were approached by an owner and told or insisted upon to lose games. And oh, by the way, I'll pay you $100,000 per game if you lose on purpose. If that is to happen, if that's true with Jimmy Haslam as well, he's got to go as an owner. But the reason I bring up the point about a white coach being propositioned in such a fashion is that what are black coaches complaining about, Ernie and Charles? What are they complaining about is this: the kind of situations we're placed in, how we're operating behind the 8 ball, the challenges that we face that people don't see, that's not equitable to what our white counterparts and contemporaries have to face. Just think for 1 second, if you're Flores, who's had a winning record, 10-6 the year before, 9-6 this past season, his 3 seasons there in Miami, he's had a winning record. What if this guy said, okay, I'll take the money, and then he lost games on purpose, like it appears Hugh Jackson has done? Hugh Jackson was 0-16 one season. Hugh Jackson had like a 3-36 record in 3 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. He'll never get a head coaching job in the National Football League again. And so when you lose games on purpose, nobody's going to get into it. They're going to look at your record, and they're going to say your record is what you are. That's a bad position for a coach to be in and to be placed in.
But in fairness, there's a couple things that concern me. Number one, tanking is not new. We're in the NBA. We're in the NBA. Tanking is not new. But are we running the chance? And I saw you and Damian, y'all had a great argument this morning, and he said something. He says the one thing we do as black people, commentators, have to be wary of muddying the water, talking about
absolutely
not point shaving, losing games. Brian is opposite said that he's saying that and Damon had a great point. We're losing the perspective of what the problem is, not hiring black coaches. Are you concerned about that?
Yes, I am. And that's why I piggybacked off of what he said and reiterated that point. And I'll keep beating that drum to make sure we don't lose focus, because at the end of the day, it is about the scarcity of African-American coaches that are being hired in the National Football League. That's what the bottom line is. But the reason why the Stephen Ross element is so important, even more important than the Giants pricking Brian Dable over Brian Flores, and knowing they had done so 3 days before even interviewing Brian Flores, is egregious and problematic as that is for the NFL because of the Rooney Rule and other factors. The Stephen Ross situation is incredibly alarming because of the proposition of the $100,000 offer per games lost. That's what makes that. We know that you're looking for draft position and you're not trying to win a couple of games here and there. That's par for the course. We get all of that covering sports. We understand that. But to go up to a black coach and to tell him to lose on purpose and we'll pay you $100,000 per game, that's definitely egregious. But it all pales in comparison to the fact that you got to address the bigger issue and not get lost in the shuffle. It's about the limited number of African Americans that are getting head coaching opportunities in the National Football League. And it's also about the players themselves possibly being helped by some of their friends and contemporaries within the National Basketball Association to bring attention to these kind of issues. Because remember, they protested after the George Floyd murdering. They protested. They made a lot of noise, as well they should have, about what was transpiring in our world. Well, this is right here in your world, in sports. This is right in your backyard. And if this kind of stuff is going on, especially since you somehow were able to address it in the National Basketball Association, you can certainly do so in the National Football League. And they may need to do so to make sure we don't lose sight and we don't lose focus of what the real issue is.
And then when you look at this big picture, what you're saying basically, again, if the allegations are true, is that, yes, we will hire a black head coach and set him up to fail.
Yes.
And that's entirely disturbing.
Well, what?
Because this is going on your resume. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, unless they ultimately say, "Oh, actually, we're trying to ultimately have him succeed by failing and by, and by taking $100,000 to lose games."
But see, to me, that's
troubling, Chuckster.
Yeah, it's very troubling. But he got to have proof of that.
I know that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if it all pans out that way. If it doesn't, then
first of all, if it pans out that way, he got to sell the team. Number one,
as Stephen pointed out, he can't be an owner.
But let me tell you something. That's a serious charge to levy against somebody.
No doubt.
You better have proof. And I saw what Hugh Jackson's people said. He got proof. When you accuse somebody of something really serious, you better have 100% ironclad evidence. So I'm a Brian Flores fan. To say that against that man, he better have proof. And the same thing with Hugh Jackson. And then the ball's going to be in Roger Goodell's coach. Like, no. We cannot have you guys out here point shaving. Y'all got to sell the team. They did it to the guy in Charlotte. And if these two guys are found to be out there trying to deliberately lose games, and listen, I've been in the NBA I've been in this thing for 37 years. There's always been rebuilding, teams trying to lose. Let's play the young guys. So I'm not offended by the tanking thing, but I've never heard it
being incentivized. Yeah.
Because I've said this about the NBA. I says I've always wanted to change the lottery system. When they were adding balls, when every time you lost more games down the stretch, I says we're incentivizing losing. Just have the lottery. Every team have one ball, and then let the chips fall where they may. This notion of the NBA used to have the wackiest system ever because most of the teams are out of it by the All-Star break. Yeah. So they were deliberately trying to lose, just get more ping pong balls in the hopper. In the hopper, excuse me.
More in the hooper. Hey, Stephen A., I mean, you guys talk incessantly. I mean, this is what you do for a living. What else is hot on your mind right now in the world of sports?
Well, listen, I'm looking at that. We got a Super Bowl coming up. Obviously, that's on my mind. But I think that this is definitely at the top of the list. And I just want to see more player involvement. And I tell you what else is at the top of my list, too. I think the whole Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons situation has really disturbed me. People think I'm messing around. First of all, I don't do stuff. I tell these, as Charles would say, some of these idiots, it ain't for clickbait. I get enough airtime. I don't need more clicks. I don't need more airtime. My life is my life. I'm good. My point is that I love the NBA. I love the game so much. And I've been involved in the NBA game for 30 years now. And to see a guy in Ben Simmons, again, we all take mental health very, very seriously. And we're not trying to diminish the importance of that. But it is important to note that there's a lot of people out there that don't believe that's what the issue is with him. They believe he just wants out of Philadelphia. That's why Charles said what he said. That's why Shaq said what he said the other day with you guys on, because people are really questioning that. But you going through the Players Association to pursue your money knowing you didn't play this year. That's problematic. You're Kyrie Irving, I understand. You're not against the vaccine, but you're not necessarily for it. You've made the decision not to get vaccinated. Okay, fine. But what if there's a Game 7 at the Barclays Center and you can't play? How about this? People in Brooklyn, a lot of traffic in Atlantic Avenue, a lot of folks struggling out here in the real world, losing their jobs, getting laid off, furloughed, etc. And you got some money and you decide to entertain yourself and you go to the Barclays Center, because you want to see these guys play. Well, guess what? You play for the Brooklyn Nets and everybody gets to see him play but Brooklyn in person, Brooklyn and New York. People don't think like that, but I do. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I understand it's entertainment and I understand that, you have a right to think differently and to be deeper than just about a game. But in the same breath, think about what that game has afforded you to do. You've talked about yourself being the luckiest man in the world, Ernie, because of the job that you have. Charles, you said the same thing. Okay, you've even alluded to stealing money, for crying out loud, because of what we do for a living.
He continues.
Well, damn it, that's the way I feel. That's the way I feel. I'm one of the luckiest dudes on the planet, and I know it. The one thing you're not gonna have to be concerned about with me, with you guys or anybody else, is that we're gonna show up to work. There's an expectation that comes with being in the position that we're in, and if we're not at work, there's gonna be a damn strong excuse not to be at work. When I think about somebody like Kyrie Irving, I think about the fact that not what's going on with the vaccine. I think about how last year, after being off for 10 months, you played for 2 weeks and then felt you needed a break and just took off for 2 weeks because of the riots at the U.S. Capitol. What that got to do with you? You got to be kidding me. That's an excuse not to show up to work? These are the kind of things I take very seriously. And I think that the people that came before us, like Charles and others and you guys, and what you've done to uplift the game, I feel an inherent obligation to hold people accountable for continuing to uplift the game we so dearly love and cherish. And I'm not going to take a back step on that issue for anybody. That's how I feel. That's where I stand, and I will not change.
You know, in your job, you got to be in heaven the last 3 weeks. These young quarterbacks in the NFL,
Yeah.
I mean, the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen was a religious experience for me.
Oh, unbelievable.
And you come back with Joe Burrow. You got Tom Brady retired. For a guy who has, and obviously football is King Kong. What have been the last 3 weeks been like for you? A
sensation. I think it's the best 3 weeks of football I've ever seen.
Is that the greatest postseason game of all time? Any sport?
I think so. I would say this. It was the great Kansas City versus Buffalo was the greatest fourth quarter I've ever seen. For Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen to go back and forth like that was something sensational to behold. And the only thing that messed it up in some people's eyes is that Josh Allen was so sensational. It was a damn shame that he was sitting on the sidelines in overtime and didn't get to touch the ball. One of the things, I'm not saying that the rules should be like college, where you're going back and forth, and it seems never ending. But you should allow both teams to touch the ball once in overtime. Now, obviously, if they hadn't given up the touchdown, then they both could have touched the ball because a field goal ain't enough to do that in the National Football League. And I get that. But if you score a touchdown like they did, Josh Allen never sees the ball, just like Patrick Mahomes never saw the ball 3 years earlier when Tom Brady had the ball against them in the AFC Championship game. And when you see such sensational play, you almost don't want it to end, but you know it has to end. It's just that you want it to end on the field. You don't want it to end with a coin flip with one team getting the ball and the officials, and you get to keep it away from the other team. But this team, you think about it. I mean, Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. And guess what, guys? We're saying this, and Lamar Jackson didn't make the playoffs, and Justin Herbert didn't make the playoffs. Imagine if they were in it too. Aaron Rodgers loses the divisional game to the San Francisco 49ers for one of the worst games of his career. Imagine if he was still playing. I mean, that kind of stuff, you just can't say enough about it. It was fantastic.
Who you got in the Super Bowl?
I haven't decided yet. It's that close because I think that Burrow and Jamar Chase are superstars. They can pull it off. But Matthew Stafford with Odell Beckham Jr. making a resurrection and reminding us all of what he could do and what he brings to the table with this kid, Cooper Kupp, who's an all-world kind of player, with Sean McVay calling the plays and being as great as he is at doing so, with the Rams playing on their home turf at SoFi in Southern California, Los Angeles. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a great game. We're just going to have to wait and see. And I will say this, I'm leaning towards the Rams only from this standpoint. When Cincinnati played Tennessee got to Joe Burrow 9 times.
And he still hung in there, brother.
I know he's still hung in there. He got it done. But what you going to do if Aaron Donald and those boys and Von Miller and them can get at you like that?
Hey,
that's going to be interesting to see.
Hey, let me ask you this one question. Hey, because I'm a fan. I'm just a fan. How in the hell is Cooper Kupp always open?
I know that.
And what he does after the catch, too.
He's unbelievable.
Here's my response to that. We may have joked around and heard a movie and see a movie named White Man Can't Jump. We ain't never said they can't run. Remember that. That brother Cooper Kupp can fly.
He's unbelievable.
He's a baller. He's a baller without question. He's something sensational. And that's why Matthew Stafford targets him all the time.
Hey, I'll simplify your prognostication process here for the Super Bowl, Stephen. It's a year of the Bulldog, man. Georgia Bulldogs and Matthew Stafford. There you go. That's all you got to know. You go.
The Georgia Bulldogs lucked up.
Alabama
was down 2 receivers. 2 receivers.
Stop it. Because Stephen A. Let me tell you something. Ernie,
I went to Georgia, class of '78.
I know that, but Stephen A. be making me so mad because he said those 2 words all the time. It drives me crazy. But you didn't get to say it this year, brother.
What 2 words?
You know what it is.
What 2 words?
I don't say it, brother.
Alabama.
Nope.
Alabama roll tide.
There you go.
Hey, last thing as we stick to our time limit with you. Look, we all heard your description of what you went through with COVID. You look great. You sound great. We're happy that you're back, but I know that is a man, that is a chapter of your life that, I mean, share with folks, if you can, in the time we got left, what that was like.
It was a little bit, it was scary. Wasn't a little bit, but it was scary. It was frustrating. I went to get an endoscopy in mid-December because I was having some problems with my throat. And they found out that my entire esophagus was inflamed. Acid reflux had done so. And so they gave me some medication. COVID piggybacked right off of that 24 hours later. And it was the night that the Kansas City Chiefs were playing the Chargers at SoFi Stadium, the thrilling game, and Travis Kelce had scored the winning touchdown. That night, at around 11:30, fourth quarter of the game, I had a fever, and it was like I had one of those oxygenated things to measure all of that stuff or what have you, and my fever, and I had 102.7 degree fever. I was sweating bullets. And, the first week or so, it was pretty bad. I worked Christmas Day from home with COVID because that was an important day for our NBA Countdown show. And then I got significantly worse. And the next week to week and a half, it was so bad. Every night, my fever was over 103 degrees. I would wake up in a pool of sweat as if I jumped into a pool, taking a shower just to watch the COVID sweat and smell off of me. I was hallucinating, and then my breathing was getting more and more difficult, and the medication that they had given me wasn't working. I'd gone to the hospital once, I'd gone to the hospital twice, checked myself in for 2 days. Then I got so frustrated, I just got up and left because they were giving me the same things that I was taking at home. Even though the doctors were great, they were just saying it was COVID. That's what you got to go through. And then New Year's Eve was when it really got scary because, the head doctor at the emergency room looked at my x-rays and stuff like that. And she said, "Where's your family? We need to call them. This is not good." And come to find out, I had pneumonia in both lungs. My liver was damaged. And they told me, had I not been vaccinated, I probably wouldn't be here. That's what they said. I know that everybody's different. My sister, she smokes. She got COVID. She was fine in 4 days. Other people that I know, asthma, they were fine in 3 or 4 days. Me, it almost took me out of here. And so, my message to everybody is that we know the virus is real. We know the pandemic is real. Consult with your doctors, follow their advice, do what's best. Although I haven't met one single doctor that has advised me not to take the vaccine and to get a booster shot. But in the end, the very least you could do is wear a mask because the person next to you may be significantly more detrimentally affected by it than you are. You don't know how it's going to affect the next person. And because of that is why, at the very least, you should be considerate of others and wear a mask, because as Americans, at the end of the day, that's what we do. That's what we're about. Regardless of our troubles and our trials and tribulations, in the end, as a nation, why we're so prominent in the world is because we know how to come together and look out for one another. So let's just remember that and do the best that we can.
We are grateful, Stephen A., that
Thank you, brother.
You shared that story, and that man, you're looking great, sounding great. Don't ever lose that voice, man. And I mean that in a physical standpoint and from a professional standpoint. Don't lose that voice, man.
Thank you, man. Love you guys, man. Happy to be here, man. All the best to you.
All right, boy. Be safe.
Love you too, man. See you.
All right, man. Take care.
It was awesome. This is it's such a. It's exhausting. I've said this before. When we were doing this stuff with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and man, it's exhausting being black. You're like,
are you looking at me for a response?
No, I know.
To that?
It's just like, Ernie,
a knowing nod of the head.
It's something that always coming up.
Yep.
And you sit at home, minding your own business, and then somebody hits you in the head. And being a limelight black person, you have to comment on it. And man, I just hope these black coaches get an opportunity. I said it on the arena. I want some black coaches who suck to get the job, and if they suck, they get fired. But they deserve an opportunity, plain and simple.